Have you ever noticed that sometimes the greatest proof that God is at work is complete silence? Yes, it's strange to think about that. Most people expect an immediate answer, a visible deliverance, a miracle with the snap of a finger. But what if I told you that in the Bible, the darkest moments are not signs of abandonment, but of providence? The story of Joseph in Egypt is not just about a dreamer who becomes a governor. It's about being betrayed by those who were supposed to protect you. It's about having faith in prison, being forgotten by men, but remembered by God. This narrative is not some sweet story of overcoming. It's a dive into dark spirituality, where a blood-stained robe, a dark cell, and silent weeping reveal more about divine faithfulness than any modern pulpit. The Bible, especially the Old Testament, shows that God's promises often pass through tunnels of pain before reaching the light. And Joseph, this deep and intense figure, carries between the lines a map for those who feel betrayed, invisible, or on the verge of giving up. In this episode of the Faith Between the Lines channel, you'll see that not every prison is punishment. Sometimes, it's preparation. You'll discover that dream interpretation in the Bible isn't about magic. It's about spiritual discernment in the midst of chaos. And you'll understand that being exalted by God almost always requires first being forgotten by men. Ready to face providence in the shadows? Joseph of Egypt wore a colorful robe on his back and a calling on his shoulders. But what looked like a gift of honor would become his passport to pain. The robe, a symbol of his father's favoritism, ignited the jealousy of his brothers, becoming the trigger for a cruel plot. The story of Joseph, told with drama in Genesis, unfolds as an intense biblical narrative, where dreams in the Bible collide with the brutal reality of existence. The scene of the bloodied robe being brought to Jacob still echoes today as a symbol of innocence torn apart by envy. The Bible doesn't soften the blow. Joseph was betrayed by his brothers. Flesh of his flesh. It's chilling to realize how divine providence can begin in a dry pit. Imagine this, hands bound, robe torn off, and a silence screaming from the darkness of a cistern. The contrast between the divine promise and the bottom of the pit where Joseph was thrown is brutal, and, in a way, painfully relevant. How many today carry great dreams but find themselves in modern cisterns, like unemployment, rejection, slander, or abandonment? Joseph's dark spirituality mirrors that of many who, though faithful, face inexplicable falls. It is in that valley that silent faith begins to be shaped. Joseph of Egypt, even betrayed, doesn't lose his center. His silence at the bottom of the pit speaks louder than cries of despair. Faithfulness in the midst of pain becomes his greatest shield, and that teaches us something valuable. Sometimes, the beginning of God's promise is the end of our comfort. And if someone today feels thrown into a pit, let them remember, even in the absence of voices, God is watching. This biblical video shows exactly that glory passes through the grave. But hold on, prison is still to come, and there, the silence will grow even deeper. After the pit came the prison. And this time, Joseph of Egypt wasn't thrown in by his brothers, but by the lie of a powerful woman. Even after acting with integrity, he paid the price for staying righteous. This part of Joseph's story tightens your chest. Who hasn't gone through that moment when everything you do right seems to go wrong? It's as if the heavens turned to bronze, and God's silence was louder than any accusation. The Bible is honest. It doesn't sugarcoat the pain of the innocent. In prison, Joseph enters an even darker chapter of the intense biblical narrative. He's not just isolated, he's forgotten. Even the cupbearer, whom he helped, turns his back. And it's here that faith in prison shines. Not a loud, triumphant faith, but a silent faith that endures even when God seems not to answer. This dark spirituality is real and necessary, because it prepares us to see divine providence in the subtlest of details. If you feel like your life is stuck, as if you're in an emotional or spiritual cell, remember Joseph in prison. Even being forgotten has a purpose. It's in that dungeon that faithfulness in pain becomes a tool for transformation. The lesson is simple. Keep doing what's right, even when no one is watching. Joseph cared for the other prisoners, interpreted dreams in the Bible, even with no reward in sight. And here's a good exercise: write down each day the small good deeds you do without any return. It reminds you that character isn't measured by applause. And at the right time, Pharaoh will dream, and the hidden gift will become the key to unimaginable doors. After years of silence, suddenly, a call. Pharaoh dreams. And no one understands. No one, except the one betrayed by his brothers, forgotten in prison, and shaped by pain. Here, the story of Joseph in Egypt shifts tone. What once seemed like a minor detail, the ability to interpret dreams, becomes the bridge between the depths of prison and the heights of the empire. The Bible shows us that sometimes, our gift seems small, until the whole world needs exactly what only we have. That moment before Pharaoh is more than a plot twist, it's a turning point. In seconds, Joseph goes from prisoner to royal counselor. But dream interpretation in the Bible wasn't just a talent, it was an expression of divine providence. Joseph knew that. He didn't say, "I interpret," but "God will give a favorable answer." That changes everything. God and suffering walked together in Joseph's journey, but now glory doesn't corrupt the character that was refined in the shadows. This is where many get lost. They want the throne without going through the prison. Want some practical advice? Reflect on which gifts you've allowed to lie dormant just because no one recognizes them. Write them down. Test them. Offer them quietly. You might be holding the key to a problem that hasn't even been revealed yet. Our life is like a canvas where God paints with invisible ink, until the right time comes to reveal the masterpiece. And Governor Joseph only exists because the boy learned to dream, and to turn dreams into salvation. The scene is heavy. A powerful man, dressed in royal robes, stands before a group of hungry foreigners. They don't recognize him, but he knows them very well. Those faces, that once laughed and sold a young boy for coins, are now bowed, begging for bread. The story of Joseph in Egypt reaches here a dark and deeply human climax. The Bible spares no detail. Joseph weeps, leaves the room, comes back. There's an invisible battle between justice and forgiveness, between the past and divine providence. What do you do when the ones who destroyed you now need you? Joseph tests his brothers, watches to see if there's true repentance. He plays with silence and tension. This is dark spirituality in its rawest form, when the Spirit of God works in secret, bringing conversion where there seemed to be no hope. Joseph is no longer just a man with political power. He's now an instrument in the intense biblical narrative, where God's promise is fulfilled, even in moral dilemmas. The robe is now a ring. The pit became a throne. But the heart still must overcome the trauma. Many in life will find themselves face to face with those who hurt them. And here's what we teach: the reunion can become the altar of forgiveness, or the dungeon of revenge. What will define that? The intimacy with God in silence. Back then, the faithfulness in pain. The silent faith. When Joseph embraces his brothers and weeps, it's not weakness, it's spiritual maturity. And it's there, in tears and embraces, that divine providence finally reveals it never abandoned Joseph. And it never abandoned you either. And now, after diving into the intense biblical narrative of Joseph in Egypt, tell me something. What will you do with all this? Will you keep seeing your deserts as signs of abandonment, or start seeing them as fertile soil for divine providence? How many times have you felt like Joseph in prison, faithful in silence, yet forgotten by all? Maybe today is the day to reinterpret your own dreams in the Bible, not as distant fantasies, but as glimpses of something God is still building, even in the shadows. Can you forgive like Joseph? Can you stay faithful when no one's watching? Or are you still waiting for life to be fair before you start obeying God? Faithfulness in pain is one of the most powerful marks of the dark spirituality the Bible reveals. And if Joseph went through all he did to show us that even bound hands can carry purpose, why would it be any different for you? If this message spoke to you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who's at the bottom of the pit. And if you want to keep learning about God and suffering, faith in prison, and the mysteries hidden in the Bible, subscribe to the Faith Between the Lines channel and turn on the bell. Because here, we don't run from pain, we decode what it reveals.